You got it.
Hello.
Hi.
Are you guys originally from Minneapolis? Did you grow up there?
You can start.
I'm from New York.
Danielle is very notably from New York. Famously, she's from New York.
I'm not famously, but it's like I take it as an insult when people think I'm from Minneapolis. I'm like, with this personality.
Yeah, not so much.
We're in New York.
So I was born upstate. I was born in Suffern and then moved down to Long Island when I was like 6. But my mom, hardcore Brooklynite, raised in Flatbush, like she's the most Brooklyn person you have ever met. So
Cool.
Yeah.
When did you move to Minneapolis?
When I was 14, my dad got a job, and I remember I was such an East Coast like asshole because they were like, "Oh, we're gonna go to Minnesota." I was like, "Where is Minnesota? Does that even exist?"
I'm from Boston, so I'm like a mass hole, you know?
Yes, I know. I was like, I know that accent.
Yeah, well, I lived in California and New York and everywhere. I worked for labels and stuff, so I moved around a lot, you know?
Yeah.
You're from Minneapolis, Laura?
Yeah, I grew up in a suburb like 15 minutes south of here, but I've been living in Minneapolis for like 15 years now or something like that. So yeah, been around.
So I have to start with this because Minneapolis has such a great history of amazing artists, from everyone from like Prince to the Replacements, Husker Du, Babes in Toyland, Soul Asylum, Motion City soundtrack. I'm going to ask you if you're influenced by any of those bands, but obviously Babes in Toyland has been somewhat.
Yeah,
but what did because you were in a band called Bruise Violet, which was a song of a Babes in Toyland song. That's why I figured you would know that. So did any of those bands besides Babes have any kind of influence on you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of in the water here a little bit where you can't, be in a band without sort of expecting that like at some point you're either going to be influenced, not even necessarily musically, but just like culturally by these other bands. But personally, I think Husker Du was a big one for me. I really, really love them. And, that was probably like, out of all of those like really strongly like these are Minneapolis staples, like that's a really big one for me. I was into the Replacements. I like them. I don't think they had the same like kick that like Husker Du had for me as like, kind of a heavier band, but yeah, I don't know, real recognizes real.
Yeah. Babes in Toyland was of course my very obvious one. When I was like 16, chased Cappy Ellen down the street in downtown Minneapolis because I was like, I literally jumped out of my car and I was like, "Oh, my band is playing, we're named after one of your songs, here's a ticket to our show." And she's just like, "Okay." But yeah, we ended up listening for them. But like, yeah, huge. I love them so dearly, like musically, sonically, and also personally. But I would say like definitely Husker Du is a huge influence on me. I mean, also as like, Grant Hart, the singing drummer, like it was also so eerie because when I was growing up here and like starting playing in the scene, I would get like the obvious like, oh, you are like this female drummer, like, or Meg White or something like that, and I'm like, okay, cool, it's because we're girls. And then for a while people were like, you're just like Grant Hart, like you play just like Grant Hart, or like and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, haha, like I get it, Minnesotan. But then I remember watching like one of their live videos and I was so freaked out because I was like, we play like in the exact same way, have the exact same mic set up. Like I was really honestly freaked out by it. But I mean, yeah, I also went to college in St. Paul, right by Cheapo Records, which is a local record store. And
yeah, that's been around for a while, hasn't it?
Yeah, and I remember when I used to go there, one of the guys who worked there was like, "Oh, that like this is where Husker Du formed." Like, I think it was Grant who was working there, and then Bob Mould came. So it's like also my St. Paul pride because I love St. Paul. I am like a diehard for St. Paul.
I've been to Minneapolis a few times with bands when I was touring. And is Electric Fetus still around?
Yep.
It is. Wow. I'll
They're
never forget. There was a girl, Mary, I can't remember her last name. She worked for A&M Records when I was working there, and she knew Lori Barbero. And we were around one night and we went to 7th Street Entries, the one that's attached to First Avenue, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I got to meet Lori Barbero. And
She's the
Yeah,
best.
she's
I
awesome.
read the book. You know, they had a book.
Yeah.
The book had come out, and I read the book, and I was like, "You are so cool," because of her family had to understand what she was doing because she had Portuguese descent, I think, or something. It was like they were such a cool band. I really
Yeah.
dug them a lot, and I
Yeah.
love Husker Du and the Replacements.
Mhm.
And I'm sappy because I like Motion City soundtrack too.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
used
I like
to,
some.
yeah, I work at a daycare and Justin Pierre's kid was there. And I remember when I first started working there and I was like, really just like, whoa,
Yeah.
Minneapolis is real small.
And of course, Prince. How can you not like Prince? You know.
Yeah. Yeah. You just gotta.
So Laura, you played in a long running popular riot. I call him Riot Girl, if you don't mind the expression, Kitten Ferrera. You still is that band still actually exist?
We're like right now not actively functioning just because the pandemic sort of,
Yeah,
put a big pause on everything, and yeah, so that's where
but
we're at.
you're still in that band technically, right?
Sure.
Too.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And also Baby Guts, and
Yep.
Danielle was in Bruised Violet, and Matt started recording you guys, but I know him from Condominium, which is
Yeah.
a really good hardcore band.
Oh yeah.
We are big fans.
Yeah.
And it seems like you guys have worked with Matt for a long time. Can you give me the timeline on all of this and how it all came together?
Yeah, totally. So I think Matt and I both ran in parallel scenes for a little bit where he was a little more in the hardcore scene and I was a little more in the like punk, straight up punk, kind of like
Right.
early, maybe even like folk punk a little bit. Not me, but like my friends were like kind of a folk punk scene. There was a lot of that going on, like, in the late 2010s or something like that. And then I had caught wind of him being the engineer in town because he was recording all of our friends' bands, and he, made a point to record these bands like really affordably and really accessibly. Like his studio was in his basement in his house in St. Paul. All of the recordings he was making were sounding amazing. And so I think the first time I recorded with him was when I was in a band called Cadet. And I think, I had just heard from enough people that he was the person to go to. And, it just clicked and made sense. And my recording experience with him, and I think this was in 2009, was like the best recording experience I've ever had. Like I'd had a number of them with Kitten Forever and with Baby Guts in the past beyond that, but like there was something about recording with Matt that was immediately comfortable, immediately like super, I don't know, I felt like I was like empowered by the way he was doing it, where like he was interested in what I had to say, he was interested in the sound I wanted, and was willing to like do that without compromising his own touch on it. So it was like this really mutual understanding of like how we wanted this to sound. And so a few years after that, Kitten Forever ended up recording with him too, sounded amazing. And then, when Scrunchies got together, it was like a no-brainer for us to record with Matt. And so he ended up recording the first Scrunchies album. And then when our two members who were originally in Scrunchies left the band, we were searching for a bass player, and he actually reached out to us saying like, hey, I know you've got this like, you would prefer to not have like a cisgendered white man in your band, but if you want one, I'm your guy. And I was like,
That's
I was like,
funny.
you know what, Matt, like of any cisgendered white guy, you're my guy. So yeah, so then he ended up joining the band, and he, played bass and recorded this album, Feral Coast. And so yeah, I feel like I've known him for probably, over 10 years now, and he's awesome. He's
Yeah,
the best.
That was a good timeline. I wanted to talk about Stunner for a few minutes because the video for Eavesdropping was my introduction to the band. When I saw that video, I think did you direct that video?
Yeah.
And edit it and everything?
we filmed it at our practice space at the time.
Yeah.
It was like I said, it was my impetus for following the band. And I know you recorded that with Matt at is Harder Commune Studio. That's just the name of his studio.
Yeah.
And Bree and Stephanie was still in the band at that point. When I heard the song Wichita, from that record, I knew that there was something special going on, and I knew it was going to even get better. So when I heard that Matt joined your band, I was like, this is interesting. Okay. And then, Feral Coat. Well, first of all, talk about Stunner a little bit, because I don't want to just move away, because that was a really good record. And it kind of like got a lot of people into, even though the lineups changed a little, U2 was still there. And talk about that record. And you were able to tour on that record, right?
Yeah.
Yep. So that record we wrote very quickly and recorded very quickly. And the first show we played was
at the end. Well, we were like, the whole thing with this band was that we were like a band in secret for a year, where Laura made this tweet that was like, I want to be in a band where I play guitar and don't have to do the hard stuff like buying a van or something else. And she did buy a van, by the way.
I did end up doing all the hard stuff.
But I was like, oh, hello, I'll be your drummer. Absolutely. And then she reached out to me. It's like, well, if you're serious, like we should do this. And I was like, oh my God, of course. But yeah, I remember you were like, I have all these songs, like this is who I want to play with us. And then but you were like, don't talk to anybody about it. And I was like, okay.
I had a marketing idea in my mind that we were just going to practice and write a full album before even announcing the band, which essentially is what we did.
Yeah, it was what we did, not essentially. 1,000% was.
And it was great. I mean, like it was a really fun experience to do something like that. And it felt like the songs came together really I don't know, really naturally for the four of us playing in this way where like, I think we all just kind of like fit right into this idea of how we wanted this album to sound. And it kind of ended up bringing in a lot of our influences from all of these different places. And I will say that Stunner is a lot more like, I wouldn't say it's more melodic, but it's got more like pretty in it. You know what I mean?
It's poppier.
It's a little poppier. Yeah. And I really, I mean, I love it. I think it's a great album. And, I also recognize that bringing Matt into the band is not going to keep those like pretty high notes that like Stephanie could hit and stuff like that. So, yeah, I don't know. The songs on Stunner really meant a lot to me because at that point in my life, I was not, I hadn't been in a band where I had fronted the band and played guitar in a number of years, like probably a decade or something since cadet. And I realized I was really missing it when I joined a Buzzcocks cover band with Danielle called Buzzcons.
Ask about that. I was afraid to say the name of the band, but I'm glad you could say it.
Cool. Yeah, and I played guitar and sang in that one, and just had this like, I don't know, it wasn't necessarily an epiphany per se, but it was kind of like oh my God, duh, I love doing this. Why haven't I done this in ages? I want to start doing this again. And then, the songs just, I think were just in me, and I just like pulled them out and wrote them and brought them to the group, and we just pulled them together in a year and just put it out. So, yeah.
I watched a lot of your past things, and I think you play drums sometimes. I mean, you didn't even have a guitar in one of the
Kitten Forever. Yeah, Kitten Forever is just basic.
You had a phone that you sang.
Yeah. Yep.
So was the reason you guys wanted to keep it a secret because you were all in popular bands and you didn't want the word to get out? Is that why it was a secret band?
Well, Beyonce put out Lemonade.
Yeah, it was really heavily influenced by Lemonade, and the fact that it just came out and it was like, oh my God, like,
yeah, like everybody dropped everything they were doing and everyone was talking about it. Yeah. And we were like, oh, well, obviously we're not going to do something as cool as Lemonade because we're not Beyonce, right. But like, it was like a cool concept because I feel like I never saw that before where like an artist was, besides like, if you remember the thing with U2 and like, when you had an iPhone,
when
they just put their new album on your phone and everyone was like, what the fuck? But like just releasing an album without telling anybody and like everybody automatically loving it. And I think we just like, I don't know, it was also kind of a fun secret. Like I was in so many bands. I was in Bruce Violet. I was also in this band Tony Peachka. I was also in this band Contentious, which is like a hardcore band. So I was playing in like all these bands, and then Laura's like, you want to be in another? And I was like, absolutely.
Were you guys friends long before you were in a band together?
This is embarrassing. So I started playing music when I was like 17, and Bruce Violet formed with me and my other friends who were also like, we were a teenage band, and we did this cover show where we covered Sleater Kinney. And it was like our first show like outside of like the teenage scene, I guess you could say. And I was just, minding my business, and then I look and I see Laura, and I go to my bandmate, I'm like, that's Laura from Kitten Forever. And I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, oh, I really want to play a show with them. And Emily, thank God for Emily, just went up to Laura and was like, hi, I'm Emily. We're in Bruce Violet. Can we play a show with you? Like, and you were like, oh yeah, sure, why not? But like, yeah, I was like very much a huge Kitten Forever fan. And then we ended up playing like a really great show together, I think within the next few months, with like Upset, which is Patty Schemmel from Holes.
Oh yeah.
Band, and that was really cool because like Patty Schemmel's like, you're a great drummer, and I was like, I'm gonna pass out. Yeah. But like we kind of like ran, like as you said, with you and Matt, in parallel lines. Like we started running in parallel lines for a bit until we like started to merge. And I remember just saying stupid stuff to her, like trying to be cool. And I remember like I was like wearing these like the Birth of Venus socks, and you were like, you have that lyric about like, I'm feeling like Venus, and I went up to her and I was like, oh, I'm wearing Venus socks, and she said, you're wearing penis socks. And I was like, I'm gonna go, I'm gonna leave.
It was an early friendship courtship where you like are like, oh god. But then we were like, I mean, Danielle's one of my best friends now, and like, I don't know, yeah, we like
rock and roll crush, right? Rock and roll.
Yeah.
You're a teenager, you're stumbling over your words. Everything you say is like the most embarrassing thing you could say.
And that was not my takeaway at all, but I understand.
I think I started to ask you this when Stunner came out. Did you guys do a national tour?
Oh yeah. We went out to the West Coast. Danielle's gonna get more coffee.
Just kidding.
We went out to the West Coast and did a 2-week tour out there, and it was amazing. We played like some really awesome shows, and then came back for a few months, and then in between, that's when Stephanie decided to focus on her other project and left the band. But then with Bree, we went out to the East Coast for a bit. So yeah, we've been around the country on Stunner, but not yet Feral Coast. Hoping to do that one pretty soon.
So when you went to the West Coast, did you do shows in the Pacific Northwest?
We did.
Yeah, a lot of them.
Yeah, it seems like that would be a really good market for your band. I mean, you mentioned Sleater Kinney before, awesome band, but Seattle and Portland and those places, I mean, it seems like a perfect market. Did you come to Boston or New York?
Yes, we did do Boston.
We did Boston at a student center.
It was so cool. It was like I think it was by Harvard.
It was like it was like it was in Cambridge.
It was in Cambridge.
It was like an almost anarchist student center or something like that. It was like a resource hub. I'm not really sure. It was very cool. And we played with a really awesome band called Seed that I don't know if they're still functioning, but they were very good.
Yeah, it was cool. Like growing, I've been to New York with other bands and also like the East Coast, but it's just nice being back out there, because that's just like, those are my people. And I'm like, hey, look, I'm back and I have a band now.
Yeah.
But I love the East Coast. If I was to choose, I mean, like, I'm so biased. If I was to choose a coast, I'm always like, go East. Like, West Coast is beautiful, but oh my God, we had to wake up. Like every drive was 8 to 10 hours. Yeah, and that's the main thing I remember from that was like, we would go to bed at like midnight after a show, wake up at 7 and have to immediately hit the road. And I'm like, nah, dude, I want the like easy, like 5 or 6 hour drives.
Yeah, those West Coast drives are brutal.
It's not easy being in a van on tour. I've been there, believe me, but you got to find a way to entertain yourself, Totally.
It's been great with Matt too, because we're all like very quiet.
Which is weird. Yeah, we're a very loud band, but when we're in the van, we just all sit quietly and like mind our own business. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about Feral Coast, because it just came out on April 1st, and it's fucking fantastic album.
Yes.
I believe you guys have 2 different label things going on, Dirt Nap, and then you got a limited edition cassette with Star Champion Records.
State champion.
State champion. Sorry, I knew I would.
Oh, you're good.
I was thinking of Mother Love Bone. I don't know.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Seattle.
weird. That's weird how that happened.
Yeah.
I got to tell you this right now. Okay, you want me to crush on you for a minute? I'm going to. When I heard the track Absolute Maximum, I listened to it the first time 3 straight times in a row. I don't do that very often, but that song, it just smashes you. I mean, it's just like, to me, when I heard the song, I love the whole album. You know, I mean, there's a lot of great songs on it, but for some reason that, I mean, it's so heavy, man. I mean, it just came out and just crushed me. Yeah. I was on Bandcamp listening to it, and I'm going to get I know it's coming out on vinyl, so I have to get that. You guys were heavy before, but you got heavier. There's no doubt about it. So Matt had to have a lot to do with that. When with the songwriting process on that record, did he have a lot of an influence on you guys to get the songs heavier, or?
I think more so what happened was I started singing because before Stunner, I was just the drummer. And when Stephanie left, Laura's like, oh, we need somebody else to sing. And I didn't want to per se, but I was like, hard. I know I can, because that's what I've always done. I've always been a singing drummer, but like, I don't know. I feel like my voice compared to Stephanie, like she like has a more like melodic, kind of pretty. And I have like, I don't even know, like the Kathleen Hanna, like Cappy Ellen scream, like I'm just yelling. I got that like yelling on tone.
Like power.
Yeah, I yell on tone more so. But like, I think this was a more collaborative thing between me and Laura, whereas with Stunner, it was pretty much like Laura's like, here's every single part. This is what you're going to do. And I was like, yeah, cool. All right. But then when we were writing this, like I even thinking about Absolute Maximum, she recorded this like quarantine album just on
I saw that. Yeah,
cool.
I heard it. It's good.
He was like, if we were to do one of these songs for Scrunchies, like I think you named another one, and I was like, no, dude, we got to do like, please, let's do Absolute Maximum. Like that song rips. I was like, come on, please just entertain me. Like, let's just do it. And then but yeah, I feel like my part in I feel like before Scrunchies was like Laura, like with Stunner. It's like, yeah, I mean, of course she writes all the songs, but then when this started coming, or like when we started writing more towards Feral Coast, that's when like I feel like my voice started coming in, because like a few of the songs were written in between the changes, like Wildlife and Black Egg were like the two that were like the like shifting towards like from Stunner to Feral Coast. That's the name of my album. And then I would say I started getting more like heavily into it. And then when Matt came in, I feel like that was like a match made in heaven for a rhythm section. I was like, because I hit really hard. Like if that's one thing that people need to know about me, is that I am just like
you guys are good together. You good
and
rhythm.
It's just like he plays the bass so hard, and like he does so many things with his bass parts that like you don't even notice while you're like playing it. And then like we'll do sound check and he'll play it and I'll be like, oh god, yeah, that's the best bass line I've ever heard.
He's very clever on bass in a way that I think, not to like toot my own horn, but I think I'm kind of clever on bass too. And for Stunner, I was writing a lot of the bass. I wrote all of the bass parts and taught them to Bree. And I think, when you're writing your own bass parts, you're doing it like, I mean, this is getting a little like how the sausage is made or whatever, but like you are playing to a recording of yourself playing, right? And so a lot of that stuff is going to be like, oh, I'm just playing like kind of quieter on my guitar in my bedroom, and then recording that, and then playing quietly with a bass over that, so I can like kind of work out the thing. And so you don't have that live sound that you can like really like play around with. And I think we're lucky because Matt is like really willing to just like try things while Danielle and I are just like going to town or whatever. And so I think he has the space, and I think we all have the space to sort of like almost extract the like heaviness out of these like songs that really in if you boil them down, they're actually kind of nice, pretty melodic songs. Like you could technically play them all as like an acoustic song and sing them, you know, like some of them maybe wouldn't sound awesome,
like
but
absolute maximum no.
It might though, you know what I mean? Like there's still like melody, there's still hooks and things like that. And so I think that like, you know, having this thing where we can kind of like almost like have those parts that I'm focused on, like the melody and the song structure and all that stuff, and then just have Matt and Danielle as the rhythm section just like tearing it up and like almost egging each other on in this way that like really fills out the sound in a way that like I've always wanted to have done, but it's hard to explain to people who don't come from a background like that of like, oh, I listen to hardcore, I listen to like Babes in Toyland, I listen to all these like really heavy bands. If you don't listen to bands like that, it's hard to identify how to explain what to look for to play. And so Danielle and Matt like know how to do that. And so, yeah, it ends up being a heavier album. So
yeah, we both have hardcore bands under our belt. His more well-known than the one that I was in, but I always like very into hardcore. So it's nice to have, or like bring that in.
Which is I don't think
I almost wore my SSD Control hat today. I should have wore that. They're an old hardcore band from Boston. This is like one of my favorite records right now. So I'm really excited. I feel like, with no disrespect due to the previous members, it feels like there was a puzzle. And then when Matt's piece got put into it, it became a perfect puzzle.
Completely. Yeah, we've talked about it. It's like, yeah, but like I love Brie and Stephanie, but like when Matt came in, it just felt like so right.
It's his like, bass sound. His bass sound is so heavy, man. Plus, he recorded everything. Did he use another engineer, or did he just engineer the whole thing?
No, it was all him. We recorded it over like honestly right before COVID. Like right before like I would say like December 2019 was when we were starting to do it, but like it's really, I remember like loving working with him with Stunner, but like and he's also recorded so many other great albums that like I didn't even know that he did, like, and I was like, what?
Oh, I was on Discogs and I looked at his discography and it's 5 pages long.
It's nuts. Like
he would be the last person to be like, oh yes, I did that. He'd be like, oh, what's next? You know, which I personally love. So.
This morning I was talking with Al Quint, who does Suburban Voice magazine, and he wrote for Maximum Rock Roll and Flipside, and I mentioned oh my God, I'm forgetting the name of Matt's band. I hate Condominium. Yeah. I mentioned Condominium. Oh, I got all their singles. You know, I mean, they're a really popular band with the real underground hardcore scene. And I think you guys, can people still say you guys are Riot Girl now, or is that going to be not a thing?
I would say we are influenced by Riot Girl for sure, but I don't know.
Okay, like, here's what I would say. I've been thinking about this a lot recently because we've been getting a lot of reviews that refer to us as a Riot Girl band or like influenced heavily by Riot Girl. And like, I think, you know, there's on one hand, you can dissect the like etymology of Riot Girl until the end of the earth, basically, and like what it all, you know, what the reality of like that movement was, and like the fact that like, you know, saying something as Riot Girl band doesn't necessarily mean anything because Team Dresch sounds like wildly different than Bikini Kill and all of this stuff. But I also recognize that like calling ourselves a Riot Girl band, or at least Riot Girl influenced, is almost like, I don't know, if I was 20 years old and I was listening to Pussy Whipped nonstop, I would want a band that I could be like, what sounds like this? What do I look for that sounds like this? And if calling ourselves Riot Girl influenced lets those people find us, then like, I'm fine with it. Like, I don't think I would say like, you know, like, yes, we identify as a Riot Girl band. Like, I don't think that's true at all. But like, I also recognize that like Danielle and I did grow up listening to all of those bands, and like to say that like that has nothing to do with us would be like really disingenuous.
Yeah, especially like speaking about like,
plus you guys are not exactly like the Linda Lindas, you know. I mean, you got a whole you're a lot heavier than that. I mean, you're crossing over into a much heavier market. And I don't really refer to you like that. I was kind of like, that was a tongue in cheek kind of thing.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think it's, there's a lot of layers to that. And it's like,
well, it's like even speaking about like Pussy Whipped, like that is like a noise rock record coming from Bikini Kill. Like if you listen to all of their discography, like of course they have like the first 2 records and they have like Reject All American, which is more like kind of pop punk, but like Pussy Whipped honestly sounds like you took like a chainsaw to every instrument. And
like Pussy Whipped is more like Pretty on the Inside by Hole
than
it is by like a Bratmobile album.
And I feel like we're just as influenced by Bikini Kill as we are like with like God, like the Jesus Lizard or like more and like Big Black and like Shellac. Like
definitely. You guys have that heavy Midwestern sound. There's no doubt. I was thinking Big Black and bands like that when I heard it. I also want to mention that I think the song Parallel was another one on the record that I really, really love. The whole record's good. Don't get me wrong. I single out 2 songs, but they were both, for me, Absolute Maximum and Parallel, like really blew my mind for sure. So I know you have some Midwestern dates planned for June, I noticed. Are you thinking about hitting the road after that, or is there a plan?
Yep, we want the vinyl to be here before because we really, so I'm sure you know this, but the vinyl pressing plant supply chain issue is like really buck wild. So it's not only supply chain, but it's also
behind.
The hard hitters are really putting out everything on vinyl. And so when Adele or Harry Styles wants to put something out, or someone wants to re-release ABBA's entire catalog on vinyl, a little band from
is that happening?
Oh yeah, it is very exciting, but that also means that a band from Minneapolis who's pressing like a couple hundred vinyl are not necessarily taking top priority for these projects. And so we've been waiting on the vinyl for a long time.
2 years.
I know it's
really
2 years. We put in our order 2 years ago. I'm so heated about it. I feel like Laura's more eloquent and I'm just like, where is it?
I know. It's super frustrating. And it's, it is one of those things where it's like, you could sit, and I know I could do this, like sit there and kind of like stew on like the why of it all and think about like, well, who's getting recognition and attention and how are indie bands treated and all of this. It's like a whole thing, but I'm glad that the album is out at all, but we're not going to hit the road until we have something to sell.
Well, and then on top of that, like touring bands are not being treated very nicely by COVID. Like, I have everybody who I know who has gone touring or like toured has had to have or like stop the tour and be like, well, someone got COVID, so gotta go back home.
And it's a big investment to go out there for 6 days and then have to like cancel everything else right away. It's a bunch of missed sales. It's a bunch of missed opportunities. You have to, try to take work off again in like 6 months to give it another shot. It's, it's a mess right now. It's really hard to be an indie musician doing this.
It's painful because, Circle Jerk, 7 Seconds, and Negative Approach just had a show in Boston, and 2 days before, Keith Morris got COVID and no Circle Jerks,
Wow.
So it's been a really rough time, and I understand where you're coming from, and I'm just worried about even where we're going right now. And how hard it's going to be for bands to continue to tour. There are a lot of bands touring right now, though. It's like insane how many shows are going on. I don't know if it's like that in Minneapolis, but here there's a ton of shows.
So I saw last night, I went to go see John Spencer and the Hitmakers with Quasi, which is Janet Weiss, the old drummer, Sleater Kinney, her band. And she was supposed to play in 2 bands. And literally, and I went with my parents. My parents are like New York City punks. Like they are the reason I know all the music that I know. So we went together and we're sitting in the restaurant attached to First Avenue. And we they put out the set times. They're like, these are when these bands are playing. We get there, John Spencer has COVID. So they had Quasi both tested negative, but they had to headline, and like it was just like a mess, and the people in the main room canceled as well because of a positive case, and it was just like honest to God a shit show in this restaurant. We were like, well, what's going on? Like obviously I'm not blaming anybody, but like oh my God, like it was just like my parents were bummed. I was happy. I was like, at least I'm still seeing Janet Weiss play. But like it was such like, and that's just what I've been seeing everywhere. It's like you go somewhere and then like even they made a comment being like, oh, like thanks for wearing masks to the people who are in the front. And then I saw so many people just still with no masks. And I'm just like, it's just like at this point, common decency and respect to touring bands, or it's like I saw Mitski a while back and she put this announcement over at the venue and she was like, if you like when you wear masks, it keeps us safe to keep touring and it keeps you safe to keep going to more shows. And I think that's what I've been telling people, where it's like it's not like trying to suppress anything, it's trying to make sure that the music industry or like like people who want to play music and your favorite artists stay safe and healthy enough for you to do it. Otherwise, like live music will not cease to exist, but like
I mean it kind of will.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's I think we're in a precarious situation as artists anyway, COVID or no COVID. Like this is not a sustainable lifestyle at all, and then to have this like very serious thing to like completely throw you off your game is yeah, I'm also worried about the future of all of this. Like even if, you know, we end up with COVID being more of an endemic and all of this stuff, I just, you know, it's really hard currently and it's being made harder by this. So yeah.
But you know, trying to keep positive about it, being like, we released an album we're really proud of. And oh my God, speaking of Big Black and Shellac, I actually tweeted Steve Albini and was like, hey, I just released this album with my band. We're really influenced by Shellac, and like also you and I share the same birthday, so I'd really love if you listen to it. And I just threw it into the void and he replied and he was like, sounds great, like good job. And I was like, oh my God, I'm like the world's #1 hater. Like I love him so dearly, like, but he's such a critic and he liked my album. I was like, nobody can tell me shit. Like literally, like I was like, Steve Albini liked my album, and then I was shouting it to people and they'll be like, who? But yeah, no, that was a really great thing. And it's like, I'm so proud of this album. And like, even with like working with Dirt Nap and also working with State Champion, like it's been a very, I've felt very grateful for it all. So I'm like trying to be like, you know what, touring and shows might suck right now, but you know, I'm still real happy about it.
Yeah, cool things.
Yeah.
You know, the whole COVID thing has been really difficult. You know, it kind of depends where you are too, you know, because when you're in Boston, everyone still wears masks and everyone's paying attention and you got to be vaccinated in this. But then if you go out in the suburbs a little bit, it's like a whole nother world.
Oh,
yeah,
totally.
exactly.
Two worlds out here, you know, and people from the suburbs come in to town for shows, and that's when all the trouble starts. Now, I wanted to just, before I let you go, I had to talk about Minneapolis because you guys were the center of a lot of things that went on out there besides COVID, the whole summer of protesting and everything. What was that like for you guys being in the middle of that in Minneapolis, everything that was happening?
Yeah. So I live, at the time I was living 4 blocks or something from the 3rd precinct, the police station that got burned down. Burned down. It was a hot spot of all of that stuff. But it was, you know, I mean, it was nuts. It was like very, I don't even really know how to like succinctly describe it, like respectfully or something like that. It was a really intense time in Minneapolis. But I think what's really interesting is that like a lot of incredible things sprung up out of it, like really amazing mutual aid organizations that are run by like our friends and stuff, and like are still going now. Like it sort of made us really reassess like the racial and financial disparities in the city and like address them ourselves, because we realized that nobody else is going to do it for us. I think it really woke people up a lot to like the politics in the city and how the mayor Jacob Fry is a lying piece of garbage and that like we have an extremely corrupt police system here. And I think that, that wasn't new when all of this stuff was happening, but it really let us see that like you can't ignore this anymore, and like what are we going to do about it? And
Mhm.
so, you know, I mean, this sort of change is very incremental and up and down, and it's like that within any political movement or anything like that. But I do think that this really allowed a lot of people to like feel like they could take political action and mutual aid and community support into their own hands in a way that like I think maybe felt a little unattainable before. So it's weird to say like this is, you know, the positive stuff that I'm looking at from like the other side of it, or still being in it, I guess. I don't think the stuff ever really ends, but like I do think that like if there is a silver lining to like these horrifying tragedies that like keep happening over and over again, you know, like police shooting unarmed Black men and all of this, like, you know, the silver lining is that like a lot more people in the city are aware of it and doing something about it. And hopefully, you know, that people power at some point will allow some sort of change to happen. But you know, it's slow, progress is slow. And I think, yeah, I guess that's all I have to say about that.
And it was very well said.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I want to wish you guys the very best of luck with this new record. I think it's fantastic. I'll wait for as long as I have to get my vinyl.
Thank you.
For the time being, I can handle listening to the songs digitally.
Totally.
But I hope you guys make it out on tour sometime this year. And just, you know, thank you. Thanks for the great music, you know, and thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you.
having
And
us.
we really hope to come out to Boston this year. We really do. I know that
We're doing well at college radio in
I know,
Boston too. I was
yeah.
like, who would have thought?
I bet you WMBR is playing you guys.
Yeah,
That would be
I
the
think we're
station.
number
Yeah.
one at WMBR actually. So
Well,
yeah.
that's why my timing was so good to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Please tell Matt I said he's awesome, and thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Much appreciated.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.